for saying to me that you're also saying I'm a handsome devil. I think you're saying that you like the fact that I move things on. I don't dwell on things.
I think he's saying that it's intelligent dialogue, and combined with the visuals, it's very stimulating. And the fact that all these people turned up without knowing what it was about is testament to that.
I do love half of this guy's money though. Okay, well thank you for that. That's very kind. Anyone else like to tell me what they like about the show? Yes, my friend.
Of all the information you give us, Gans, and the grossing figures that these things took, it's incredible. I mean, it's like Titanic, 2.2 billion. Jesus. I'd like to know how much it cost to make the film.
Well, you're talking about Titanic? Well, he was given 10 million just to do a couple of scenes to see if they liked it or not.
God, hang on. You've overwhelmed me. You're such a good film bloke. I'm thinking about turning. Oh no.
I tell you what, do you want me to come back to you? I'll come back. And that voice does not sound good. Well, ladies and gentlemen, okay, well tell me what you would like to hear more. So you've come to see a guy talk about the movies. What are you expecting?
Sound designers and like for Avatar, Chris Boyce was the sound designer.
You want to hear more about the stories behind the people who made it, or the stars, or both?
They're about the people behind the scenes.
Okay, I'll give you one last go.
Epiphany. All that background with regards to what happens in the house, back at the theatre, back at the drive-in when we used to have them. All those backstories.
Okay. So you like the story about the projectionists that I told today, and the story about sacking people for licking the ice cream cones. Oh, I can't reach you there, sir. You're going to yell out.
Well, maybe a few anecdotes about how the actors and actresses got on together, fell out with the directors, a few backstories about the film and the behind the scenes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what about the behind the scenes business that I do to occupy the first half of the show? Would you rather I just do 20 movies and talk about those sort of things? You like the behind the scenes stuff? Yep. Okay. Right. Mostly I'm getting nods. Yes, sir.
That interview you showed to us on the ET with the child being interviewed, that was just phenomenal. Yeah. Something like that, again, if you could show that. Yeah.
Someone thought that it was Ron Howard doing the assistant director role of reading the lines to Henry Thomas. Henry Thomas. Yeah. So we're talking about the structure of the show. So, I do half behind the scenes, trying to give you a few stories about my life in the cinema industry and how the cinemas industry is run, and then the other half about movies. Everyone in general happy with that?
Yeah.
Okay, terrific. Anything else anyone would like to add about the market research part of this? Yes, sir.
It's great to hear about a young boy from Albury doing well, and like your story as a young Aussie guy, and now you're on this cruise, and all the talks are really stimulating. All those little bit of interest, like the people in the on the drive-ins, opening the boot, and that person with the pamphlets getting money. All those little extra things really make it.
Thank you very much. That's very nice of you. And do you see that, or does it come across that I'm really I'm really pointing towards entertainment. That's what I want to do with you people, is entertain you. Now, a lot of other speakers want to educate you. And I also feel as if I try not to put the spotlight on me. And when I first started doing this, I spent a lot of hours on the show, because I thought to myself, I've got to make the show good. The show's got to stand alone. If I'm feeling bad or I don't perform, the show's got to stand alone. So that's what I really try to do. So I really only do 15, 17 minutes, and the rest of it is video clips. And I think the show stands up because I've tweaked it and tweaked it and tweaked it. It stands up without me. I don't think that I'm a bit like a football umpire. I think I'm a bit in the background. Sure, I've got a little role to play, and when the spotlight's turned on me, I better hit the mark. But basically, the show stands alone. You guys feel that? Yeah, I'm the director. Yeah.
You were very passionate about everything that you did. There was a real sense of passion about it. And the music that you played, for me, was fantastic. To me, it was one of the best bits.
Look, I love that. Thank you for bringing that up. So I try to put, hello Kim, I try to put music into the show because I think music is evocative and it brings back memories. And I think that it instantly can place you to different places. And I think it just quickens up and livens up the show. That's what I'm trying to do. Present a quick-paced, fast, lively show. If you're bored here and there, you just have to hang around and you might get something a bit interesting. Rather than what I've seen is people dwelling on points ad infinitum, never ending.
Does the age of time, do you think of that a lot? That is, rap music now, a lot of people go basically for the retro music, which is the 80s and 90s. So therefore, with your style, would you then all of a sudden say, we're not going to do the 80s tonight, but we're doing the 90s and moving into the 2000s?
Yeah, you're saying I could perhaps time the music to the period, rather than what I'm doing now is timing the music to the film. I'm tying the music to the film, aren't I now?
Because that's
It's
a
sort of
thing everywhere. I mean,
Yeah.
we've all got to just sort of keep up with that. Otherwise, like me, you just die into the background, you know?
Very true, very true. Okay guys, well thank you for that, that's handy. So we'll talk about the movies in a second. I just thought I might talk a little bit about this. About public speaking. So obviously in my career I had a degree of public speaking. I held a lot of training seminars, I did now and then some presentations to people, did a lot of staff counselling, and I did intros to premiere nights and charity nights and that sort of stuff, you know. And I always thought I was pretty good for about 3 minutes. I could really, you know, hit the mark for 3 minutes. And one of my marketing managers, I remember him saying, "You're like a game show host, Doug," which was a good compliment. But I also knew that I went downhill pretty quick after 3 or 4 minutes, whereas now I'm doing a 45-minute show. So it all came about on the Queen Mary 2 in March 2024, yep. We were sitting there, it was our 4th trip on the Queen Mary 2 as a paying customer and our 18th cruise altogether. And I'd always been involved and interested in entertainment. So I'll go and see if there's a professional seamstress on stage, if there's a professional bingo player on stage, anyone who's professional and highly dedicated and committed to what they're doing, I'll go and watch them. I don't care what it is, music, magic, anything. So, I thought that, I was going to all the speakers. I went to the speakers this particular day. I came back, Robin said, "What did you think?" I said, "Oh yeah, not bad, you know. A couple of them lacking a bit of basic public speaking skills." And then that night, we went for dinner and they had the tables really close to each other and the whole 3 speakers were there having a bit of a party, but they were intermingled with us. So we joined them and we laughed along and had a great time, and they sort of said, they sort of intimated that perhaps with my background I could do this. They, I told a few stories. And then the next day we got invited to a cabin in the speaker's room, and then we met up for dinner, and then I organised an hour's meeting with each speaker and shouted them coffee and took some notes. And I was starting to get the idea, but then I was thinking, movies, everyone must be doing movies. But the speakers told me, no one's doing movies. And then I thought, well, who wants to hear me speaking about movies? And then I remembered that I was National Operations Manager for Village Roadshow and that I'd run 28 cinemas. So I had a bit of cachet and a bit of status, and therefore people might start off listening to me. That was the general idea. So I had those interviews with these guys, and then I went to the library for the next week and a half, Queen Mary Library. Isn't it a beautiful library? And sat there and wrote a whole lot of notes. And as I said, the actual, for all of you people that have been in business, the hardest thing in business is to find the vision in something, to find the concept. And once you find the vision or the concept, how it comes about, how you make it happen, seems to fit into place. So I came up with the vision of my own inside cinema and then the 10 top grossing films or the 10 top films. So that came pretty quick. So then I just had to work on the other stuff. So I went back to my house and I was told an agent to contact, and I sent off a application. And I had someone film me, and then I hired a conference centre with a TV and a microphone. And I got an email back about 3 weeks later saying, "Dear Doug, great presentation. We wish you well in your future endeavours. We can't use you." And then I said, "It looks like you're reading." So I was pretty disappointed in that, and I didn't like it. My wife said, "Oh, didn't you used to write that same sort of crap to people when they didn't get jobs?" I said, "Yes, I did." She said, "Oh, how's it feel?" I said, "Not very good." So I probably did something that other people don't do, and that is that I tried again. This time I hired a cameraman 3 weeks hence, and I hired the conference centre 3 weeks hence, and I rehearsed day and night. Not really, I rehearsed 2 hours every night with my wife in the lounge room. I set it up on the TV. I had a makeshift podium, and Robin laughed at every joke, as she still does. And then I sent off the application, and that was in the morning. In the afternoon they said, "Do you want to go to Honolulu and pick up the boat and come back?" And then the next week I was ringing and said, "Oh, by the way, the boat's going to be 4 days in Sydney and then it's doing the Pacific Islands. Do you want to do that one as well?" And then about 3 weeks later they rang me and said, "There's another boat going to New Zealand. Do you want..." Anyway, I had 5 bookings before I'd made a talk. So it suddenly occurred to me that I better learn something about public speaking. So in March of 2024, when I got the gig and was told that my first talk was in October, I then set about writing everything. And each talk took me about between 110 and 120 hours. So I spent 6 months, full-time, 9 to 5, 5 days a week, working on those talks. But it was a passion. I loved it. I enjoyed it. Because when I was in business, I was basically a businessman. They don't hire you to do the type of thing that I was doing because you love movies. I was a businessman. So when I got out of that, it was great to step back into a movie role. So I spent 6 months doing it. And by the time I researched it, wrote it, I had to learn PowerPoint. I only had a little bit of PowerPoint 5 or 6 years earlier, but now the whole, so I had to do all the transitions, animations, all sorts of stuff. And it was murder for a start, but I did that. And then I had to decide to do some public speaking. So I then turned my attention to that, and I watched hours and hours and hours of YouTube and read a whole lot of books. Now, I'm going to pass these around. You can just have a bit of a look. I'm hoping you might find it mildly interesting. But here are my notes. So this is the talk I did 2 days ago on the 80s. There's my notes, and you'll see a couple of other things included, including you'll see that I have on the desk in front of me, smile, pause, eye contact, and speak slowly. And then it's circled here, no ums. So, as I said, I do take it pretty seriously, and I am very much trying to improve. I think there's a lot of blue sky. I think I can do a lot better than what I'm doing now. But I sort of approach it as in, I'm just a passenger, an ex-passenger who's getting up and doing it. But I'll pass this around and you have a look at the notes. I really just have a printout of the top 10 films, and then I have a print up of the first half of the film. I'll start around here. Of the first half of the talk. That's what I do. Now, I'll also pass you this. This is what I get from the ship when I first get on board, and it tells me what talks I'm doing. And this is the only time I find out what talks I'm doing. I got this gig 12 months ago. Someone had pulled out of a trip, Melbourne to Hobart on the Queen Elizabeth in December 2024. Yeah. And my agent rang and said, "Do you want to do it?" I said, "Yes." And then I did it. I didn't think I went very well. I was brand new. I didn't think the assistant cruise director liked me very much. I was very surprised when the next week I got an email from my agent saying Cunard would like you to do the Queen Anne in 12 months' time. And that's the last I heard of Cunard. But here it is. Here's the talks that are listed. And also in it I include the 11 talks I do. So I do 11 talks. And you'll see that on this sheet of paper in particular, I list the story that I'm going to come on stage with. So when I'm preparing, I always think to myself, I want to come on strongly and I want to finish strongly. And in terms of nerves, about 45 minutes before the show, Robin has to get out of the cabin. Do not come anywhere near me, because I'm very nervy about 45 minutes before the show. And
I'm just going to have a coffee.
and I'm pretty awful before I do the first show on a ship. But I do try to come on stage with a bit of a bang. I don't want to come on like I have seen. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to talk to you about the movies, and I hope that you enjoy your time with me. I try to come on with a bit more unexpectedness than that. And then I try to finish strongly. I try to have something to say at the end that will make you just have a think about things. And then, of course, in general, what I try to do is talk extemporaneously. How's that for a word? Extemporaneous? No, I can't spell it. I definitely can't spell it. Extemporaneously means off the cuff, but closely rehearsed. And that's the way I speak. And this was the other thing I wanted to ask you guys. To me, it's very important. But how do you guys feel about that? You see speakers up there reading from their computer screen, and they're getting everything right. The way I do it, I sometimes miss key points that I might have said, I might have wanted to say. I've even missed punchlines, so I don't get everything right. But I like to think, and what drives me, is that what I miss in the exactness of the delivery, I make up for in the engagement that I'm giving and receiving. Do you guys know what I'm saying?
Yes.
What do you think?
You're going back to the same points he made. You switch from one thing and then you go back to another and then come back to another, and that makes it interesting as opposed to just reading something that's obvious.
Do you find that, I don't think, some of these guys are terrific the way they do read from their computer, but it just seems to be unengaging to me, and I turn off after about 10 minutes. I think part of my delivery style that is a help is that it looks a bit dangerous. And people are wondering, what's he going to say?
This type of thing really is if you're a natural. Okay, it's a natural inbuilt thing. I don't know if you've watched the chappie from the art department who looks after the art department. If you watch any of his presentations, he is a natural. He's had no training whatsoever. Spoke to him a couple of nights ago, and he is an absolute natural. Now, you have to be a natural to come across to people. It just comes that way. Now, you have been working on it, so unfortunately you haven't got that natural ability, but still what you've done and the amount of homework that you've done is complimentary to you.
Oh, very well put.
Yeah, that's good.
Very well put. And I think in my defence, I think the fact that as I said, I've got some blue sky, I think I can see myself getting better. Anyone would like to make any further comments on that point about the engagement, speaking extemporaneously rather than speaking from your notes. So, you know, as I said in today's talk, I think it was that, or yesterday's talk, you know, I probably have 10 or 12 stories about each film, really. But of course, there's no time to go into it all. But all I really need to see is, I've got to get those notes back too. All I need to see is the name of the film, and that will jog my memory. So it looks as if it's off the cuff, but it's not off the cuff, of course. Any questions, Robin? Guys, let's talk about the movies, hey? Kim? Thank you, Kim. Yes. They reckon if you can fake sincerity, you got it made. Yeah. 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 I'm hoping to make up for my deficiencies in that way that I deliver things conversationally. That's what I want to do, have a conversation with you. I don't want to get up there and lecture, because frankly I don't really think I'm good enough to do that. Okay, now do you want to talk about movies? All right, let's talk about movies. Do you want to ask questions, or do you want me to start? Madam, up there. What is my favourite movie of all time? I wish I had $100 on that. Look, the short answer is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and the long answer is that I've really got to break it into genres. It's very hard to really realistically say that is my favourite film of all time. I mean, some recent films that I've enjoyed, No Country for Old Men, The Departed, that type of stuff. Terms of Endearment, loved that. Loved Saving Private Ryan. Loved 1917. Loved the other one by Christopher Nolan, not Bismarck. It's a war movie, absolutely terrific. Love Mrs. Doubtfire. Love Back to the Future, love Beverly Hills Cop. So it's... And I have to say also, before anyone does any talking, a disclaimer. So if I had any area of expertise when it comes to films, it would be the last 50 years, films that made a lot of money. Okay, so, you know, I have had a lady come up to me and ask me if I knew of a 1942 Italian film. I said no, and she asked me if another one, an Indian film, 1933, no. So, and although I've seen 4,000 films, that's my claim, there's been 100,000 films released in that time. So I'm 96,000 films behind. But let's talk about movies. What about you, sir? What's your favourite movie?
I don't know.
Back to the Future, yeah, that's unbelievable. What about you? Robin, another Robin.
I'm not in the show.
Shawshank Redemption, 1992, yeah, terrific film. Wasn't a hit at the cinema, but it went well. Dr. Zhivago with Omar Sharif, yeah, very, very nice film. And some of those films of that ilk, Lawrence of Arabia, Spartacus, they're all really worth watching.
Colour Purple.
Oh,
Colour Purple
that was
with opera and Danny Glover. Yes, it was. I thought the book was better. Yeah, but lovely film. Steven Spielberg, of course.
Will you read as well? You have time to read?
I have time to read. Well, I'm not doing the dishes or the ironing.
I don't know what other people think. We're all more or less the same age group, but I did used to go to the cinemas a lot. But I do find in recent years, it's all shoot and blast and films, and the bigger they disintegrate and everything. And I've lost all interest in films. I saw The Housemaid a few weeks ago, a good film.
Which one?
The Housemaid. I think it was called The Housemaid. Good film, but other than that, the shoot and blasting films, I think they've lost us.
Okay, let's talk about that. So, who thinks cinema's dead? Yep. Okay, well, it might interest you to know that 1.3 million people in Australia went to the cinema last week, and that's in a bad month. March is an extraordinarily bad month for the cinema, so I don't think it's dead. And we've really only dropped 30% since COVID. So we've gone from 100 million admissions a year to 70 million admissions a year. This is Australia I'm talking about. So 70 million admissions a year, it's still, if you put all the AFL and NFL and anyone else, racing, golf, everything, put it all together, the movies are still winning. Are the movies as good as the old days? No, you're right. There is far too many shoot 'em up, far too many franchises, far too many films that have gone to the marketplace because of market research, and it shows on the screen. But if you look around, you will find good films. They are there, I promise you. We Live in Time, Thelma, a couple of these films have been really good. So I don't think cinema's dead. I think there are good films there, but you've got to look for them. And of course, it's pretty expensive now, isn't it?
I was just going to say we saw Hamlet.
Yeah. Like it? Yeah, Hamlet. Yeah, that's good. Very good. And anything else about the movies, guys? I'll tell you the little quick story.
Okay.
A guy, a mate of mine, come over here, a mate of mine the other day, he said, Doug, you've got to have a lot of chutzpah to do what you do. And I knew what the word meant, but I immediately went back and Googled it. And I was amused to see that it said sort of a reckless, brazen self-confidence. And the example was a man who murders his parents and then throws himself on the mercy of the court because he's an orphan. How good's that?
Yeah, I don't know if it was today's presentation or not, but was Jurassic Park the first one to make over $1 billion?
I think it was. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, I think it was. Yep, I think it was. And then to see Titanic made 2.28 billion or something.
Talking about Titanic,
Yes.
you said there wouldn't be a number 2. Who do I pitch a prequel to?
Yeah, there could be a prequel.
Yeah. Who do I pitch it to?
I don't know.
Well, you're no use to me.
Oh, no, I don't know. There might be a prequel to Titanic. Who knows? I don't think so, no. Any other questions, guys? What about I'm going to talk about, time's going slowly. Yes, Kim? Speak a bit about the Australian film industry?
No, so how many theatres, picture theatres are there in Australia?
Yeah.
And how many screens in those theatres?
I think there's probably about 3,000 screens in Australia, and something like 21,000 in the States. I don't know how many theatres. I do know that if you added up all the independents, they outweigh all the chains put together. So that's a bit surprising. There's a lot of mum and dad operations still in the cinema business. Yes, sir. I'm going to hold the microphone.
I don't know how much you people pay to go to the cinema, but our local cinema, United Cinemas, pensioners, they pay $10 and you get a chop bomb chucked in. Now, how do they make any money out of that?
What do they get chucked in?
A chop bomb.
Chop
Chop bomb, ice cream with chocolate on the top.
Chop top.
Chop bomb, I call them.
What do you chop?
The woman that licks it.
Oh my God.
Lady, yeah.
Well, I think when I was in the movie industry, I always thought the prices were pretty reasonable, and I always equated it to everything else out in the marketplace. You go to the football, you go to the live theatre, everything. The movies comes up pretty well, considering you're sitting in a $1,000 seat, you've got a $500,000 sound system, you've got $1.5 million of air conditioning, you've got $750,000 for a carpet, all these things matter up. Cinema industry is very, very capital intensive. It's very expensive. So your local multiplex, for example, have I got a local multiplex? You got multiplexes near you? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's normally about $1.5 million per screen to put the building in. So you're talking about the average multiplex maybe being 15 million, 20 million to build. And what do they take? they normally take round about, so if it's a 10 screen cinema, they would be taking 600,000 admissions a year. So that's pretty good, 600,000 admissions a year. And as I said, this morning the business revolves around popcorn and Coke, guys. That's what the business does. I don't know about the ship business, maybe it revolves around the food and beverage as well, I'm not sure. But the cinema business is definitely popcorn and Coke.
Oh yeah, it was on fire. That was quite funny. Tell you what, you told them all about the man who phoned you and said the theatre's on fire.
You mean the cinema on fire?
Stories like that.
Oh, have I got any other stories like that? Oh, gee whiz. I'm working on them. That's a joke. Now, I've got to say that all my stories are true, but, true-ish, but they have got a bit of pepper on them. In fact, the only one that hasn't got pepper on it is the one I told, I think it was just the last one, about the lady coming up to me and telling me how talented I was. Did you hear that one? Yeah. I can't even tell you, I can't even put it into words how that whole conversation took place, because she was so over the top. Any more stories like that? Oh, gee whiz. Well, I can tell you that when I went to Las Vegas every 7th year, I had a lot of great experiences in that. That was great. One time, and I haven't told this story on stage, but one time I was sent over there as a guest of Coca-Cola. So we must have sold a lot of Coke that year. So it was all business class and everything. And we had, had a nice suite at one of the casinos. And we had these lunches that I talked about where the stars come to the lunches. And in those days, the security wasn't as much. So, the public, i.e. me, we weren't public, we were 400 or 500 people from all around the world who had to have an accreditation with the American film industry. So no one could just get in. But we were there and all the superstars are here. And at this lunch, which I didn't normally drink at a lunch, but I did have a glass of wine at this particular lunch. And I went to the toilet and I was standing there at the urinal and I turned around and it was Cuba Gooding Jr. next to me. Do you remember him in the Tom Cruise film Show Me the Money? And he's also he played O.J. Simpson in the TV series. Anyway, so I'm standing next to him and he looks at me and I said, how are you going? And he said, how am I going, man? I'm going by limo. How are you going? I said, I'm okay. I'm going well. I'm feeling really good today. I didn't ask you how you feel. How you going? How'd you get here? Anyway, we had this ridiculous conversation and then he started to ask me about koalas and kangaroos, and he was one of those guys who really thought they were up Swanson Street in Melbourne. And so we had an amusing conversation. He said, come back to my table, and Russell's left. And I found out later on that was Russell Brand, the English comedian, who's in a bit of hot water at the moment. And so we walked out of the urinal, and we walked that way instead of that way. That's the way I came in, which was the public way. And that way was to the table. So I'm following Cuba Gooding Jr. and he leads me to this table and I sit down at the table. I'm sitting next to Adam Sandler and Cuba Gooding's here. Right opposite me is Tom and Nicole. And they're in deep conversation. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Steve Martin, and I can't remember who the other guys were. And so having a lovely conversation and having a lot of laughs and Adam Sandler wasn't really talking to anyone. Everyone else was in conversation. And he started talking to me and I said, I congratulated him. He just had the wedding singer. And he said, oh yeah, and he looked around the table and he said, I may not be the sharpest tool in the shed, but I am a effing multi-millionaire. And, I had a laugh. And then a couple of minutes later I felt a presence and there was a couple of bouncers there waiting for me. And one guy leaned over and said, what are you doing here, sir? And I said, well, Cuba wasn't there. Cuba had gone. So I was escorted back to my table. And the next morning I got a phone call from Melbourne, my boss, asking me what the hell I was doing, sitting at the guest table, and can I conduct myself better because I'm a guest at Coca-Cola. Anyway, so that's a story that happened. But those conferences were great because they'd also put on all the entertainment. And after the film Tarzan was screened for us, the curtain came up and there was Phil Collins and his band, and they did 3 or 4 numbers just for us. We got to meet and greet with Muhammad Ali. We had Dolly Parton perform, Ray Charles, all this sort of stuff. So the movie industry in the States, guys, you've probably got to go back 25 years ago, maybe 30 years ago. It was the second biggest export earner in the United States after aircraft. Now, I think it's probably caught up with many other things in the nowadays, but it was a huge industry and still an important industry. Anything else, guys? Yes, sir.
Do you think that Quentin Tarantino is actually an artist or just a violent juvenile?
Oh, I think the way he puts films together, he's got to be some sort of an artist, but he speaks like a violent juvenile, that's for sure. But, I'm in awe of Pulp Fiction and what he made out of Bruce Willis and what he made out of the story. The worst part about Pulp Fiction was his cameo. His cameo was absolutely shocking in that. Do you remember that? It came on and he absolutely crap. But, so I think he's a pretty good filmmaker, yeah.
What about Django? What about Django?
Django, terrific, yeah.
His role in Django.
His role in Django, I can't remember it, to tell you the truth, but I know he would have been in it. Speaking about roles in things, Alfred Hitchcock, he had 42 roles in a film, and he always made that cameo appearance. And he used to make it, any time in the film, and he found out that people were sort of just waiting for him to come. And it was spoiling the film, so he started to make his cameos in the first 10 minutes to get it over and done with. But he made a film in, I'm going to say, the Britons are going to correct him here, but I think 1942, just after the Second World War, or during the Second World War, called Lifeboat. And it was basically a story about 8 people in a lifeboat, a person nodding their head up there, and he had to make a cameo. Any guess as to how he made the cameo? Do you know, Michael?
I think I know. Isn't he on a bottle floating by or something?
No, but it's a good guess. Good guess. Michael thought it was a bottle floating by, but it's along that lines. At one stage, one of the lifeboat people reached into the bottom of the boat and pulled up a newspaper, and there was Alfred Hitchcock's face in the newspaper. Terrific. But look, I love the movie experience, guys, and that's what I told you before that in my first talk that's my ulterior motive around here is to inspire or reignite or light some sort of motivation for you to go to the pictures. I'll tell you a couple of reasons. One, the obvious one, if you've ever had a pizza out of the oven, not quite as good the next day out of the fridge, is it? The same with a cold beer compared to a warm beer. So, we're talking about watching films on TVs and going to the cinema, a whole different thing. But I did make some mistakes, two big mistakes in my commercial life. They didn't mean much at the time, but they could have. One was I viewed Crocodile Dundee in a cinema, in a crappy little cinema by myself about a month before it came out to the public. And I went back to my boss and said, look, this is an embarrassment to the Australian film industry. This is a shocking film. And I saw it with a full house on opening night and I loved it. There's just something about having people there. And lo and behold, I made the same mistake 10 years later with Titanic. I saw that in a crappy little cinema a month beforehand, and I thought, oh my God, no, it's too depressing. It's awful. And but it's very important when you're running a cinema to have some sort of expertise in if a film's going to work or if it's not, because all your staffing levels and supplies go into preparing for that weekend's trading in particular, or the opening night's trading. So you've got to have some skill, but it's a very, very difficult skill. And even after all my years, I might give myself a 8 out of 10, but you guys would be a 6.5 or a 7. There's not that much difference in it. Very hard to pick what's good and what's bad. And you can count the number of entrepreneurs on one hand in Australia, not many of them. Speaking of that, I did work for Michael Edgley for 6 months. I was loaned out to him to go and manage the Great Moscow Circus in regional New South Wales. And then he followed up with another 6-month rental of me to manage the Torval and Dean show in the same area. So that was all very exciting too. So I've had a pretty good life. Now, movies. Let's quickly go back to movies. So I'm going to do a talk about, my last talk will be about movies that changed the world. I just want to hear from people what movie they feel has really knocked them. And I think I talked when I mentioned it originally that, it's that feeling you get when you sit in the cinema after the film concludes and the credits roll. You don't want to talk to anyone, you don't want to move, and you leave the cinema feeling a little different than the way you came in. Tell me what your movie is.
Love Story.
Love Story, yeah. Love means never having to say you're sorry. It affected a lot of people, didn't it? Yeah.
Schindler's List.
Schindler's List, yes. Sort of a, basically a weepy to some degree. It was manipulated. It did manipulate us, but a great film too because it brought awareness to the issues, didn't it? And remembrances of the times. They're two great examples. Anyone else got an example? To Serve with Love. Yeah, why?
It was a good time in my life because I got on the Australians to come over to England and that and Zorba the Greek with the two songs at the time.
Yeah, fair enough. Interestingly enough, with I'm going to come around there and talk to you guys. Interestingly enough, with To Serve with Love and Sidney Poitier, he was the biggest star in the world in 1967, but he was too black for the white society and he was too white for the black society, and he had to carry all this pressure, and it was all during the race riots in America. He had to carry all this pressure of being the representative of the African American community. He was a Jamaican, as a matter of fact, but it really sort of drove him mad. But he went on to have a successful directing career as well. Is it you?
Emily.
Emily, okay, I don't know it. Yep.
And I love seeing foreign films to see how other countries.
Well, isn't that the best thing about film? The fact that movies allow us to see cultures and meet people and hear people and see living conditions and all that we wouldn't otherwise get, other than if we do travel, of course, but I love the way that we're able to identify with other cultures in movies. It's a fantastic piece of magic that movies have. You look like Michael Caine. You're straight out of the castle.
Yeah. People are going to hate this, but I'm saying Australia and rabbit-proof fence.
Oh, yeah. Well, why would people hate it? Yeah. Oh, beautiful film. Beautiful film. Hey. Beautiful film, Australia. I've got to say something that, when I was doing the iconic movies, I had some Americans come up to me once and they said that a family of Americans, grown-up family, 2 adults and 2 children, and they really sort of attacked me because what happened to Quigley Down Under? That should have been one of the iconic Australian movies, like, Thomas Sutton. It wasn't an iconic Australian movie at all. Who else had something in regards to, madam?
Imitation of Life.
Imitation of Love. Yeah.
About the new one, Avenue.
Yeah. No, did it take any money? I don't know, sorry.
Very modern film, of course, but I loved Skyfall. I did mention it at the end, and I loved the music from Adele.
Skyfall. Yeah, great movie. So,
Helter Skelter.
come off it. Really? The Charles Manson story. Is it that one? Pretty sure it was. Is it? Okay. Can anyone help us out there? Helter Skelter. Was that about Charles Manson?
Yeah.
Yeah? Yeah. Yeah.
I was thinking skinheads and yeah, that's right.
Clockwork Orange.
You're thinking of Romper Stomper. Tell you what, that was a fantastic film. Russell's evidently very difficult to deal with. I told you that story. All I had to do was bring in his carton of beer. I didn't actually have any contact with him, but people told me he was pretty difficult. The film that really hit me to start off with, and there's plenty of films that do, and I talk about them in some of these talks. One film that really hit me hard in terms of changing my opinion on things was Brokeback Mountain. You want to see that? I love that music too by Ange Lee. But the movie probably in my early days that really affected me, I think I was probably about 16 when I saw it, was To Kill a Mockingbird with Gregory Peck. And he plays the lawyer and he's protecting the African American that's going to be found guilty on rape charges that he didn't actually do. And he stands at the courthouse at night and all the villagers come around. They're going to lynch this guy. They're going to lynch him. They're going to take him out of the jail and lynch him. And Gregory Peck's really battling to try to hold the fort. And then little Scout, the little 10-year-old girl, comes up from under a bush and she starts to go around the people and say, "Oh, Mr. Washington, didn't my daddy do your lawns when you broke your back and you couldn't help? Oh, and Mr. Simons, didn't my daddy help you get a job when you were unemployed?" And all of a sudden, all this hatred and violence just, disappeared from the scene. Beautiful movie, love Gregory Peck, absolutely fantastic. Harper Lee, was the only book she ever wrote was To Kill a Mockingbird. No, I'm not counting that sequel, because it wasn't really a full one. And you do know the story about Harper Lee, that she was Truman Capote's research officer on that magnificent book In Cold Blood. If you haven't read that book, wow. So that's good, yeah.
Heat of the Night.
Heat of the Night, I love that film. Rod Steiger, I'll tell you a bit of a story about Rod Steiger. See, I need to be pressed to come up with stories. Rod Steiger won an Academy Award for that, and he had a reasonable career, but not really as well as what he would have liked. And his wife says that after he won that Academy Award, he sat by the phone for 2 years waiting for phone calls that never came. And he said it just broke, his wife said it just broke him. Rod Steiger. Yes, madam, I can't get up there. In the Heat of the Night you're talking about? Yeah. Yeah, great film. And it was a time in our lives, wasn't it? Sadly, it's not quite eradicated, but it was very interesting. And look, some of those movie stars. That's the thing that does worry me about the movie industry. Where are the new movie stars? Where are they, and where are they going to come from? As you say, they're not going to come from Avengers or Endgame or Spider-Man, because they're all in a bloody costume. No one can see what's going on. So where are these movie stars coming from? Chris Hemsworth, Greg Powell, you could say, they're coming along. But where's Dustin Hoffman, Steve McQueen, these sort of guys? Yeah, well, they've got two, haven't they? Let me have a little drink. How are we going, guys? We've got about another 10 minutes, if you like. Any questions? Got one from Michael.
You were on the cinema side of the business, so you said that the I don't know what you call it, distributors, film companies, whatever, get like 90% at the beginning, and the theater people don't, the cinema people only get 10. The movies can't be seen unless they're in the cinemas, so why do the cinema people put up with that little amount?
Well, good question, but it's been something that's been going on for years and years and years, and the whole film hire business is out of date, because I told you that the distributors take 90% of a big blockbuster like Barbie or Gladiator 2 or one of those films. They take 90% and the cinema gets 10%, and then that might be for 2 weeks, and it comes with restrictions as well. You've got to screen it for 2 days, 3 days and 2 evening sessions. Then it might drop down in its third week to 60-40, one-on-one, 1 day session, 1 evening session. But this is a bit of an outdated business model, because nowadays with all the multiplexes, you have Gladiator opening on 5 screens, and you have everyone coming all at once, and gone are the days of word of mouth. And all that really started with Jaws. Jaws opened on 400 or 500 screens in America in 1977, and before that they were still doing the usual thing of opening in 3 cinemas in San Francisco, see how it went, move it to LA, see how that went. There was also the cost of prints in those days. I talked about film disappearing 10 or 12 years ago, but a print of a film would cost a couple of $1,000s. So if you want to have 400 prints of a film, you're talking about a lot of money. Nowadays, Avengers would open on 3,000 prints, but they're digital prints, so there's no big cost. So why do the cinemas put up with that? Look, the cinemas need the product. They're the supplier. They need this product. Sure, you're right. The producers, the studios, the distribution outlets, they need outlets, but particularly in today's market, they've got other outlets. So we haven't got a lot to stand on. Yeah, very interesting. What else, guys? Yes, sir.
Speaking Mike. When you say a film's grossed, say $2 billion, how do they work out the $2 billion? I mean, is that the amount the cinemas pay to get the film? And where does the $2 billion go to after it's been, does it go back to the studio, the producers, the actors? Where does it all go to?
Oh, well, it's not really my area of expertise, but I'll do my best to answer it. That is, where does the money go to and what is that money? First of all, it's very hard to compare films in different eras. So everyone says Gone with the Wind has made the most money, followed by Avengers, followed by Star Wars, or followed by E.T., followed by Star Wars. It's very hard because you've got huge discrepancies in population bases, let alone all the discrepancies. I was talking to someone the other night about this kid, let alone the discretion in the in inflation and all that sort of stuff. So it's very hard to compare what is the biggest film of all time. Where does the money go? Well, the average Hollywood blockbuster film, I think I might be talking about this in a couple of days' time, it costs about $200 million. So, and of that, probably 25% would be wages and salaries directly to actors, depending on how big the film is. Where does the money go? The money goes back to the studio, of course. Of course, the big studios nowadays, they don't really make a lot of films, guys. They're basically finance companies, and the films are made by independents. That's my understanding of things. So, yeah, but look, in the 1990s that I talked about today, that's when the problems arose, because the film industry started to get taken over by the talent agencies, CAA, and that's where Michael Oritz came in. I think that's his name. But so they would be going to the studios and they would say, we've got XX actor, plus we've got this screenwriter, plus we've got this director, what about a deal? You know, give us $75 million and you've got a deal. And the star wages just went berserk. You know, as I said, Bruce Willis, he was on $20 million a picture, and people made an awful lot of money. Marlon Brando made $19 million out of Superman. So the money goes back to the people who put the money in. And nowadays, I might show a clip about Matt Damon talking about it. It's a very risky business, making films. Very, very risky business. You can go downhill very, very quickly because it costs a lot, capital intensive, and as I said before, not many people can pick the public's taste. And Louis Mayer, the famous studio head, he always said, in this business, no one knows a goddamn thing. And it's very true. Very hard to pick the public's taste. And you've got to do that. And furthermore, you've got to do it 2 years out. So you've got to project what's coming up. So it's a very big risk. And, CGI has increased the cost of things so much that it's very, very costly. Not many films being made in Australia now. The films that are being made in Australia are from overseas. Not many Australian films are being made, are they? Yes, sir. Have to yell it out.
It seems counterintuitive that CGI has increased the cost. I would have thought the technology would have reduced the cost.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because there's a little bit of both. It's increased the cost of the big CGI, the big green screen CGI, like, the big explosions, or like the added effects later on. They're very, very costly, very, very costly. But if, for instance, a film wants to make a scene, have a scene where the actors are eating a whole lot of food, a banquet of food, well, it's cheaper now to do little CGI and make that food CGI rather than all cooked up and prepared. So it's...
Another reason why they come to Australia is because of the atmosphere and the clarity, and that's one of the main reasons to get the movie big overseas.
Yeah. Yep. I think there's a... Well, we live in Australia, there's plenty to offer here.
Clearer weather than overseas.
Yeah.
Therefore, they can bring down their timing.
Yep.
As to the problems they have overseas.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Anyone else before we sort of close up? What?
Director, editor, or sound score, which one's the most critical? I know.
Did everyone hear that ridiculous question?
You have recuts.
Well, first of all, in my research for my talks, sound design. Does anyone know anything about it? So I can tell a whole lot of lies. That's good. Sound design is such a complex issue and thing to have the ambient sound working, to have the background sound working, to have the voices dubbed. Everything in sound design is critical. The director, well, they've got the whole look of the film, the whole feel and look of the film is their responsibility. Well, George Lucas would easily say that the editor is the most important person. George Lucas's wife, who I talked about being separated from and having custody of the children, she was one of the best editors in the business, and she edited all Martin Scorsese's films, and she edited all of George Lucas's original films, American Graffiti, and those sort of films. I'll tell you a little bit about Steven Spielberg quickly, ladies and gentlemen. I said in one of my talks that all these people lived and worked overseas and then brought back all their ideas to the American film industry, and Steven Spielberg didn't. And the other film people that I've spoken about, the other directors, Scorsese, Bogdanovich, Peckinpah, Coppola, Altman, Allen, they all worked from without the system, without the system. They didn't work in the system to get their movies made during this time. Everyone understand that? But Spielberg didn't. Spielberg was different. He went to film school initially with George Lucas at maybe 21 years of age, maybe 20 years of age, and he, for pocket money, you know, you've all know the backstory of Steven Spielberg. He used to, as a kid, he'd have a train set and he'd film the train set blowing up and all sorts of things, and that's how he got into the movie making business. But at 20 years of age and going to film school, he had a little part-time gig, and he made a film called Amblin, A-M-B-L-I-N, Amblin, and as you may know, his entertainment company was called Amblin Entertainment. And it was all about two college hitchhikers, and he showed it on all these college campuses in Los Angeles, and there was plenty of them, and he was making some good money. And he had Sid Sheinberg, the head of Universal Studios, come to one of his screenings because his son, Sid's son, was going to the college campus. Now, that is like owning a petrol station in Australia and having the head of BHP come into your petrol station. So Sheinberg immediately said, look, this guy's got talent. I'm going to sign you on a 7-year contract. And Steven said, well, I don't really want to do that. I want to study film, and I've got a very good mate in Georgie, and we want to work together, and so I don't really want you. And Sid Sheinberg said, look, do you want to make movies or not? And Steven Spielberg said, yeah, okay then, sign me up. So he signed him up, and he then started to work on Murder, You Wrote. And someone mentioned to me the other day a TV series that Columbo, thank you, yeah, Columbo. He directed episodes of Columbo, and then of course he started with Sugarland Express with Goldie Hawn, and then he did that fantastic made-for-TV movie called Duel. Do you remember that? About the truck driver. What a great film. And that film was so successful on TV, they released it in other countries in cinemas. And then of course he had Jaws. And he did Jaws at 26 years of age. Now, I've got a 34-year-old boy, and at 22 or 26, he can barely do his shoelaces. Seriously. And there's Steven Spielberg. He's got all pimples, he's got unruly hair, he's 26 years of age, and he's running a major film that was steadily costing more and more money because he didn't follow the advice that he was given. Everyone begged him not to shoot at sea. Don't do it. It's too hard getting everything there, getting all the equipment there. And he said, no, I want to do it. I want the realism of that. So he held up pretty straight. But he was going to get the sack, and the head of Universal, it might have been Sid Sheinberg at the time as well, backed him up and said, look, we believe in you, we think you can do it, we'll go ahead and do it. So, it was just an enormous success, that film. And that film is as I say, introduced staggered sessions, it introduced different release patterns. It also introduced advertising on TV. That's the first time they spent nearly $1 million on TV. Now, of course, not so much now, but 10 years ago, all advertising was basically done on TV. And it was the start of the summer blockbuster, and it was the start of making films for kids. George Lucas did it with Star Wars, of course, but Steven really started it a bit in 1975 with making films for kids. Up until that time, it was all Guess Who's Coming to Dinner and all this sort of stuff, all for older people. And they started to make it for younger people. And interestingly enough, Raiders of the Lost Ark, all these George Lucas, Steven Spielberg films, they're pretty violent considering they're made for kids. Lots of murders in there and killings and everything. What else was I going to say about Steven Spielberg? No, I think that was it. Are you just pursing your lips? just sitting there minding your own business? That's fair enough. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's great. Thank you very much. So I think what I want to try to leave you with is that, I'm just fairly new in this business. I'm very keen on improving. If in the remaining time we've got, if you can come and give me some ideas, that's good. I go home after this cruise and I work on those talks for another 5 or 6 hours and really drill down and try to make them better and better and better. Is that true, Darwin?
Absolutely.
Because maybe this isn't so good for me, but I just want to put on a good show. That's what I really want to do. So you guys have put on a good show today by turning up and listening to my crap. Thank you very much. All the best. Thank you.
Oh, that's great. Really good.
Don't know how to turn it off. Thank you.
Oh.
See you at
Be careful what you say. Right?
Yeah,
People say when they're
exactly. That was good, wasn't it?
I thought you were going to have a go at him about putting you in your snoring. Yeah, you should have
No, I know.
put him, embarrassed him.
Yeah, I'll get him at home.
Hello, Robin. I'm Robin.
Robin, oh, you're Robin
Yes,
too.
I am.
Oh, nice
So
to
we're
meet
meeting for
you.
drinks at 6:30. Now, I was just thinking though, do you eat late or are you freestyle or?
We don't know. Oh, well, in the restaurant?
Yeah.
Oh, well, we just decide what we're doing at the time.
Okay. So
what would you like to do?
only that, if we could make it a wee bit closer to 7.
Oh, absolutely.
That's okay.
Of course.
That'd be great. Okay, so we will meet. Where are we going?
Commodore Park.
Commodore Park.
Isn't it lovely? I know.
So no, we were up there last night. There would have been 6 people there.
See, isn't it wonderful? We
He's
didn't
done
find
well,
out.
hasn't he, the big guy?
Oh, he has.
It's his
He's done
passion.
But it's
Yeah.
you know,
fantastic
Yeah.
just to
but
see
we're
you
not
up there.
gushers, but we just go. It's so obvious to us that it's a man with such a passion. It's just been beautiful.
Oh,
Well,
that's
let's
just
go
been
and
lovely
see.
to
Oh,
hear.
That
It's
fella doing the
dicey.
arts and natural, but you're not a
You're
natural,
not
but
natural,
you know, your passion. You go, oh, that's rubbish.
Oh, so interesting. We love it.
Oh, that's
So we will see you.
That's
We'll
it.
see
Lots
you.
to talk about.
We have.
haven't
We have.
And just casual, what do we do? Dressing up
Yeah,
or
no,
what?
it's not a gala, is it?
attire.
Just
It's a smart.
Okay, all right.
So we'll see you up at the
Oh,
Commodore
chatting.
about 6:45.
Catching up together.
Another Robin.
What a shame we haven't met before now. We could have been having coffee every day.
I know.
We'll have to have another cruise together.
Bye.